It's a great day. My name is Che Brown, the happy entrepreneur, and welcome to the Happy Entrepreneur Show, the number one business development and revenue focused late night show in the country where we are on a mission. And our mission really is to inspire, our mission is to empower, and our mission is to provide you, the entrepreneur, actually the hardworking entrepreneur, with all of the resources that are necessary to execute that big vision you have for the people you were called to serve. And on this episode, we have the one and only Dr. Genie Snyder, who's in the building. And she'll be talking about how to use your genius in entrepreneurship, or really, what is your genius? We're going to discover that. What's going on, Dr. Genie? How are you?
Hey there. I am doing great today. Thank you. And I'm just excited to be with you on your show.
Great. Now, I'm curious. I know one of the topics is always, what is your genius? And we're talking about entrepreneurship. But if someone's listening right now and they're like, wow, Shay, the question's asked, what is your genius? I know it's an unfair question, Dr. Genie, but I'm curious, how does someone even discover what their genius is? Again, it's a loaded question because I know the audience are many places, many spaces and backgrounds. But when the question is, how does someone even discover if they're walking in their genius? What would you say to that person?
Well, I think those are two different questions. So I'll start with the first one of how do you know what your genius is? And genius is a remarkable level of talent. So that is different for every person. And I think sometimes we talk about being geniuses. I call people geniuses, but I think it's not having to be, you don't have to know everything. What you have to know is, what is your core? What is it that you can do that's different from anyone else? And not to sound trite, but basically it is the thing that makes you distinctive, and the thing that you have a little bit different edge than anybody else, even if everyone's an entrepreneur, even if everyone's a speaker. It's still that difference that makes you different. And then the other part about, are you walking in it? Well, that's what we work on, is how do we make sure that we are defining what our genius is, actually bringing it out. And I love the term you actually use, walking in it, because it's not about getting to only that big thing, but it's all the steps we have before we get to that big thing. And that is thinking like ourselves as opposed to trying to cookie cutter what somebody else is doing.
That's perfect. And there are a number of folks on here who are dualpreneurs, by the way. They work a full-time job, they're full-time entrepreneurs. And then in their full-time capacity, many of them are leaders. And they might be curious as they're listening to you talk and saying, wow, leadership means different things to different people. When Dr. Genie thinks of leaders, what's her definition, and what's one of the characteristics that a leader should have? And I realize they get applied in entrepreneurship. But like I said, a number of folks are leading organizations, they lead teams, they lead people. So my question is, when you hear the word leadership, what does it mean to you these days? Maybe it's changed over the years. And number two, as it relates to leadership, how can folks be able to be more effective leaders?
I love the question. I work with leaders of leaders. So one of the things that we really work with in our team, and that I work with as a speaker and EmCee coach, are people that are leading leaders. So I'm very interested in working with people who also, yes, they are leading, and I use the active verb a lot more than I use the word leadership, because I like to work with leaders of leaders. So I like the active action verb of people who are actively leading, whether they are an entrepreneur and have a small team, or whether they're leading a large corporate organization, or whether they're one. Because I think when we've got people who are working both in their day job, as we call it sometimes, and their entrepreneurial venture, you have to be even more of a leader, because you are having to lead yourself, which is the hardest part. And so I think as we are leading, I like to use the word lead and leading action verbs, because it is a continual process of discovering our genius and how we lead. So I think it's less now about, I'm going to look like that when I'm a CEO, or I'm going to do like she's doing when I am president of this company. I help people to figure out, what is it that I do best, and how can I lead people in that genius? And then as entrepreneurs, the hardest thing we sometimes have to do is ask for help. How can I find other people to align with who can help me, particularly when we're in that day job. I started my first business while I was working a more than full-time job. So I know what that feels like, the late nights and the early mornings and the constantly thinking about it, as you're driving, as you're getting ready in the morning. How do we I don't use the word balance as much, but how do we focus on both what we're doing in one job as well as while we're building that business? And I think that is real leadership, because you're having to not only think dually about your jobs, you're having to think, you're having different sides of your brain working at the same time to
The
be
exact same time.
to be
And I'm
present.
curious, as you were saying that, I'm curious that leads us right to another a part there. And you said you got to use both sides of your brain. The number of folks says, Shay, then that can she expound on being able to prioritize, and is there such thing as work-life balance? Don't worry, we'll get to connecting entrepreneurship, ladies and gentlemen. But there are folks that are saying, Shay, she gets me already. I work a full-time job and I'm a full-time entrepreneur. I'm also a husband, or I'm a wife. I got to take care of the kids.
Right?
Oh, I'm a caregiver. I got to take care of. Oh, let her know, Shay, I'm also involved in my community. Let her know I'm involved in other activities. So I feel like I'm taking care of everyone else. But my genius, really, I'm trying to do in my entrepreneurship, and I don't have time. So the question, if you could ask her, is there such thing as work-life balance, number one? And number two, how did she go about, or how does she recommend leaders prioritize so they're able to still shine bright in both areas with so many responsibilities? It's a loaded question, but
The
she can handle it,
work-life
ladies and gentlemen.
balance, I'll put that first. So I don't use the term work-life balance. I use the term work and life because I think I've been told my whole life, and now I'm finally strong enough to say, when people say it's not personal, it's business. Well, I think business is personal, and I a lot of it's combined, and I think we learned that a lot in the last few years, that we do combine life and work. And so I use the word life work. I feel that you use this term when you first introduce your show, and you do it every single show. And I love it where you talk about serving. You
Yeah.
use what's your thing? What's your phrase? You said, in the way that we serve. I don't have it
Yes.
exactly right.
Yeah. For the resources for the people that we were called to serve. So we're called to serve people, and we've got to have the right resources.
That's what I loved about this. And I hear you say that in every one of your shows, that we're called to serve. And I really believe
Yeah.
in calling. That's part of my makeup. Is faith is very integral to me. But it's a verse that I hang on, a scripture verse I hang on, is it's about the hope of our calling, not just our calling. So some of those of us who used to think we were sort of can't find what we want to do, now it's turned multi-passionate, which makes us sound a lot better. However, I think when we are entrepreneurs, we are constantly multi-passionate, and so it is the hope of our calling. We are continually called to be more of the servant leader that we can be, and that you don't get there and say, "All right, I'm done, servant leader, check." We are continually serving, continually leading. And therefore, that's why I talk a lot about work life, but I don't, and my life's work, but I don't necessarily use the balance. So, to your second question about prioritizing, if any of my friends and family were listening, they're like, "Oh my gosh, Jeannie's all over the place." But I think we have to prioritize every day in addition to our month and annually. Now, that takes, at least the way I have to do it, it takes a readjustment, a reset, maybe even multiple times a day. So to get here today, tonight, to film this show, thank goodness it's at 11 o'clock, but to get here and figuring all of that out, I had to prioritize what has to happen today and what things are going to go till tomorrow. Now, I can't say I don't feel angst about it, but I think that is, as entrepreneurs, especially when we are doing dual positions, I think the reprioritizing is kind of like leading. It's the action verb. We are continually thinking about it.
You know, we got started and we jumped right into it, and you're such right on top of the case. Thanks for being authentic with us. There are folks that are saying, Shay, I didn't get a chance to read her bio. Okay, seriously. I mean, I like what she's saying. It's making sense, but can she explain who she is? Like, what's her backstory so we understand that? And what was that defining moment that led her to doing what she's doing now, which is serving in this capacity of helping folks connect their genius in entrepreneurship and in leadership? So, you know, the question, who are you? What's the backstory that led you to do what you're doing now?
Okay, well, who I am, I'm Dr. Genie Snyder, and I am a professional speaker, MC, executive coach, and entrepreneur. I have been doing this a very long time, over 25 years, and that has been an evolution of businesses. So I've had three or four different businesses, but the speaking and emceeing has been a part of everything that I've done, even when I was doing those dual jobs. My background is in both corporate and in higher education, and also have done a lot of work in program development and events. So you see where a lot of our work is that I have developed. A lot of the work that I've developed is working with those intersections of things that don't make sense. One of the things I talk a lot about is contradictory concepts and how they can become, contradictory constructs and how they become complementary concepts. So something that might have held us one time where we think, how do I do this? When we match it with something else that may not make sense, i.e., um, coaching people and doing events. Well, that makes some really robust retreats now because I understand both what somebody from both sides of the table wants. Or I might be working with a corporate board or a corporate leadership team where I've sat on both sides of that table, where I've been the leader and I've also been the person listening to the leader. And I think we bring I try to remember what it felt like on both sides of the table and sometimes shift back and forth in those roles. The backstory of how I got here, I wish I could tell you I had a really strategic business plan and I decided, 10 years before I jumped into entrepreneurship that I was going to do it. But
Mm-hmm.
my first business I started, I still did that while I was the dual career person, and I had wanted to have an events business, and I started it while I was working full time, which means you really work full time. When I started my actual speaking company, I was working for another company that does training, and I was more on the marketing side and the business development side. And I was ready to actually do more of the speaking. And I was kind of caught in a box on the marketing side. And so when one day when we had a conversation and I was thinking that this was going to move into perhaps a long-term option, I realized that I didn't want to just only do the marketing my whole career. And so when we had this really honest conversation that I had about maybe one day to prepare for, uh, my then leader was saying, well, this doesn't seem to be working well for you. And I said, it's not. And they said, what do you want to do? And I said, I'm going to start my own business. And I remember looking up like, God, is that what I just said? and and my then leader said, you are? And I said, I am. And that's how I started. So I sold my car because I had to have a car bigger to be able to carry a flip chart and event and retreat materials. And I made $2,000 on my car and got another car. And that was my big capital planning and started my company. I did contract work with that company for about 6 months. And when I got my first client on my own, then set up the office in my guest room and went forward from there. And so that was over 25 years ago.
Wow,
It's been an
congratulations. And you're rocking and rolling these days.
Well, I think we're always rocking and rolling. And sometimes I think this is one of the things that it may seem like it's a trajectory, but I think if we are true entrepreneurs, we know, Jay, it is, we could be having a great month or year or 5 years. And then you are constantly reminded to bring out your genius and bring out your entrepreneurial skills because if we are doing entrepreneurship the correct way, we are constantly reinventing, rebuilding, rethinking. And I think that is the part that sometimes people either don't know or maybe forget. And to stay in the entrepreneur world for a long time, we are having to do what we're inviting others to do, and that is to think differently.
I love
That
the
is where
word
your real.
think differently. Yeah, I like that think differently. And as you were saying that, it leads me to connecting your genius and entrepreneurship. And I like you to kind of maybe frame it around using your voice. There are a number of entrepreneurs that are out there today, and some of them are rock stars. They're speakers, and they can speak for their business. Allows them to do that. Talk about the importance of communication as the CEO or head entrepreneur in your business, and being able to use that and leverage your voice to get in front of more folks. When many times individuals kind of shy away from that because of the fear of speaking. And you probably heard the fear of speaking is like the biggest fear we all have. So what's the question directly? The question directly is, how can you connect your genius with your communication skills to help your entrepreneurship business grow?
My first response that's coming to mind is it's less about your voice and it's more about listening. And I learned this in maybe the third year of my business. I was working with a really large bank. And at that point, I was thinking, oh, they're considering me. And I remember listening to them, and we set up a meeting. And at that time, you took a printed packet. I got halfway to my meeting, about an hour and a half down the road, and realized I'd left my marketing packet at home or in my office. And I said, well, what am I going to do? I couldn't figure out anything. So I went in and I took a lot of notes, which I always do. I asked a lot of questions, which I always do. And I really listened. And I said, well, I would like to pull my proposal together for you and send that back. And I'll send my marketing materials. I'm sweating bullets saying that. And I got home, went back to the office the next day, wrote the outline, sent it to them. And when they called to say, Jeannie, we're choosing you, even against some other high-powered consulting firms, I'm glad I didn't know they were in the mix when I was talking with them. And she said, you know why we chose you? And I said, I don't. She said, because you didn't come in here with a big marketing packet and telling us what you're going to do. You asked me questions and you listened. I never took another printed proposal or marketing packet to any meeting after that, because I learned to listen. So that's my main thing, is asking questions, listening to their answers. It will tell you why they need your genius. It also may tell you why you're not the right match. And that's an important thing to know too, when it's not right for you.
It makes sense. And that leads us to a segment we have here called Today is My January 1st. Now, for those folks who tune in every night at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you know what we're about to do, by the way. You can go ahead and say those magical words. Today is my January 1st. For others are wondering, Shay, what are you talking about? What's going on here? Today is my January 1st is our personal mantra at the Happy Entrepreneur Show. It represents a fresh start. It represents a do-over. It means our past, no matter how dark and gloomy that past is or how bright and sunny that past is back there, the past no longer equals the future. And so we listen to Dr. Gene. We might be wondering, two-part question. Number one, when you hear those words, today is my January 1st, what do you hear? And number two, was there ever a time where there was a setback in your business or life? And if so, how did you bounce back from that? I mean, maybe her life's been perfect, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know, but we'll find out in a moment. But how did you bounce back?
Yeah, my life's been perfect, so I can't answer that question. No, kidding. I actually love this question because I love January 1st. I'm not wild about New Year's Eve, but I love January 1st. It's one of my favorite days because it is a fresh start. I'm going to answer in two ways. I think the fresh start is every single day is a fresh start. That sounds a little hokey, a little cheesy, and I'm going with it because every morning when I get up, I have to think, what do I get to do for my business today, for my clients today? And importantly, which is this something I learned later, what do I need to do for me as the CEO to stay fresh, to look at something differently and not just do the same old thing? I would say a general kind of setback for me in the first years of my business was when I did some contract work for people. I felt like I went in and I prepared too much because I didn't want to be caught off guard. And I would prepare 3 days worth for a 3-hour session. I finally got comfortable with that, where I backed off and I started to not only prepare what I need to prepare for that day, but I prepare open space. I've got, now been in the business long enough. I've got some, different arrows in my quiver I can pull out because I'm watching the audience. I'm watching my group. I'm watching to see what they need. And I think I have to do that in my own business when I have setbacks. So, yes, I am a pretty optimistic person, but those of us who are pretty optimistic, when something does go awry, we go to that other end of the continuum sometimes. And I think to be quite honest, my hardest part is, um, I would say I do pretty well at coming back. I'm not sure I bounce back when it's something really big. If it's broken hand, I can bounce back from that pretty easily. But if it's something where I've lost a client, which is very rare, but it's happened when I was undermined by a colleague, um, my bouncing back is slower because I will say, what did I do wrong? I think for to be self-aware and to have good EQ, I think we need to have emotional intelligence to be aware of what it is we could have done better, and really think and do that. I think is helps with the if not bounce back, the climb back up. Um, but it also, I'm pretty tough at second guessing my actions, and so that's something I've had to continually learn to be able to turn the page more quickly. Is to not second guess, to say that was a lesson learned, even if I felt like I learned it over and over. So I think it has to be a very strategic, intentional path. It's not just "ooh, well, okay, that happened, I'm moving on." I have to kind of think through it and how I'm going to apply it. I don't know if that actually answered it, because this is something I think we all struggle with as entrepreneurs. Maybe
Now
you more.
it answered it. It answered it perfectly. And as you're talking, you get so excited when you talk about helping others, helping them with their genius, and helping them in the area of leadership, and helping them in the area of communication. What do you enjoy most about what you're doing these days? Because certainly I can hear the excitement in your voice, just what you're talking about.
Topic wise, or the parts of my business I like the most?
The part of your business, yeah. What do you enjoy most about the business you're in these days?
My favorite thing, I really love everything I do. I've always loved work. I've had one job in my life I didn't care for, and I've always loved work other than that. Um, but I love emceeing and speaking. And I would say, if I had to put one above the other, I love doing a keynote, and that is because I get to speak from my heart, and I get to speak hopefully with the audience and where they are, where they're struggling, or where their heart is. I love emceeing, maybe even a little bit more. And that means master of ceremonies at a conference, or at an event where I'm pulling all the pieces together. And that's where the contradictory constructs and the complementary concepts all come together, because I don't know what's going to happen. So, one of my favorite rules of life is to plan, so that you can plan well ahead of time, so you can be spontaneous in the moment. And I'd say that's how I work. I plan, 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 plan. But when I hit that stage, I'm watching other people's eyes and motions, and how those speakers work together, and who's coming next, and how I can help make that event for the client, for the audience, and for those who are listening, even more of an event than they expected, to try to bring that magic. Pun on
Mm.
genius intended. Pun on genie intended.
you know, thanks for being authentic. By the way, one of my questions I love to ask on these type of conversations is, what's one of the best pieces of advice you've ever been given that you would like to share with the audience? And I always remind the listeners at home that we're not asking you to come down the mountain with the 10 Commandments or anything here, but I'm curious. You've had a lot of mentors along this journey of life. You've read so many books. You probably forgot how many videos and hours you spend watching videos. At least these days, man. That's
Right.
more folks will watch more hours of videos than they read books easily. So, what's one of the best pieces of advice you've ever been told, and why?
Hmm. I've got two things that come together. One, because we just talked about it, and that is, don't second guess yourself. And I would say I've heard that from multiple people. And the other one is, stop worrying so much about what others think. That sounds so normal, but I remember my mom telling me that over and over, and I get a lot of my genius from her. She was quite the servant leader and quite the creative, and a lot more outspoken than I am. But I think I might be somehow channeling my inner Betty Jean sometimes, when I hear myself sometimes going directly to the point. I don't know that I will ever not um, wonder or want to explore what other people think, because that's how I discover genius in people. But the best advice is not to worry about what they think. And that is how we get to, I think, as you said, walk in our true genius, because now it's an intentional step every day.
When you're not out saving the world, when you're not helping people walk in their genius, or at least understand their genius, we're not on the stage having fun, taking care of the audience and making sure the event is far more spectacular than they imagine. What do you do for fun when you're not out saving the world?
I travel, and that is my favorite thing is and most of the time combining travel and work a lot of times, but travel is absolutely my favorite thing. And I'm good if I'm traveling across the world or just to a new hotel somewhere. I just love meeting people. I love conversations on trains, planes, automobiles, and elevators. I'm that person.
What's
And
one of your favorite places that you visited? And I know again, it's a loaded question, but for all the places you travel, what's one place that you really enjoyed, whether it's overseas or here, and why? I mean, now the artist's leaning forward. Don't worry, I'm not going to leave her. I'm not going to leave y'all hanging. I know you want to, wow, she loves traveling. Just one place that stands out in her mind. And if so, why?
I loved India. I
Ah,
loved India, and I loved it. I wouldn't say it's the most fun place I've ever been. I went there for
right.
work and for a mission trip and for personal travel. So it was kind of a combination. I loved it because of the people, and I loved it because in different parts of all over India, you saw completely different things. I mean, I was in a field with a tea plantation one day. I was in a village one day. I was in Mumbai. I was in Agra seeing the Taj Mahal. In 3 or 4 weeks, I saw such a contradiction. Um, that's where contradictory. I haven't thought about this before, but that's where contradictory constructs really became complementary concepts, because you saw how the intersection of people and culture came together, and it was just a fascinating experience all the way around. Getting to both speak there and travel and see things that I've never seen before. So that's why I loved it. And I was chased by monkeys there too. So you can't have that happen just anywhere.
Definitely not. First, let me say thank you so much for being on the Happy Entrepreneur Show. We have a two-part question as we close out. Number one, what type of clients are you looking to work with these days for your firm, if any? And number two, how can folks best connect with you? How can they stay in this conversation over and beyond the time that you and I have right now?
I would love to connect. That's one of my favorite words. And that is, I would say, well, first I'm going to flip the order of the questions. GenieSnyder.com, Genie like in the bottle, GenieSnyder.com. And that's my website. It's got a place to connect with me on there. And Genie at GenieSnyder.com is email. The other, so that's how you can connect. The people I love to work with are leaders of leaders and people who are leading. So it doesn't mean you have to have a huge team of 25 or 2 million. It just means that you are interested in leading and serving people. And so it might be that you have a very small team, or maybe you're a solopreneur. But I help people figure out what it that is their genius, help them to explore that, express that, and get it out there. And so I would say, if you're interested in learning how to be an MC, we have EmCee University. If you're looking how to just explore your genius as a leader, we have Genius retreats. In fact, there's one coming up July 28th, I think it is. It's the last Sunday, Monday, Tuesday in July of this, like next month. And that's where individual leaders come and work specifically on their genius and what their next ambitious milestone is. And then I also love conferences, to be keynote speaker or to MC conferences, trade shows, events, etc. So those are the people I like to work with, people that are serving their people.
Well, let me say, first of all, it's been an honor and a privilege. Thanks. I'm glad I had a chance to meet you in person at Ramon's event. It's not often the time I get a chance to meet other folks.
Event.
Yeah, but we did get a chance to at least meet each other. So thanks so much for being on the Happy Entrepreneur Show. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Dave. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
And thank you. Thank you to the audience. Thank you for tuning in. You know, without you, there is no show. So we really appreciate you being here. We appreciate you showing up. Yeah, it's kind of cool when you hit the like button, but more importantly, our biggest appreciation is when you hit that share button. when you pay this message forward to another community or to your community so they can benefit. And I never get tired of reminding you every night at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, no matter what's going on in the world, no matter what's going on in your life, that you are truly this super incredible, amazing person. And as you heard from Dr. Genie on the other side, you are a genius inside of yourself, and you're a kind human being who wants to make a huge difference. So thanks for showing up. I believe today is your January 1st, and I believe your best is still yet to come. Your best is yet to come. Your best is yet to come. With that being said, my name hasn't changed. It's still Che Brown, the happy entrepreneur. Make it a great day, everyone. Thanks a lot, Jeannie. Peace.
Thank you, Che. You're a genius.